Today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to take just a little bit of time and show you how to go from this brand new unopened box of full-length arrow shafts to this. So stick with us and we'll show you all the little details, and if you've got questions about how to apply wraps, anything like that, we're going to go through it all right here. Okay guys, so we have here our brand new box of unopened arrows. I just slid it with a razor blade and we're going to pull it and tear it apart. We will hold on to these inserts. We will definitely be using those in a while. And here is our dozen brand new uncut raw shafts. And the reason I get these guys like this, I can build the arrow to my specs. It's also obviously a little cheaper to get them unfinished and raw 31-inch shafts like this. And just to give you a tip, guys, I'm not an extremely great archer. I'm never going to be a Levi Morgan or anyone, Chance Boboff or somebody like that who's consistently winning. They're basically living off the money they're making in their 3D tournaments. I'm not that guy, but I do try to stack everything, all the odds in my favor, and that means I will try to pay attention to detail in every area that I can. Here's one example. This is a .001 straightness shaft. It's the straightest that you can buy from the factory. Okay, most people will take this and stick it in an arrow saw, such as this right here, and just cut off down to their 29 inches if that's what they desire. And I've already ran the numbers. This is something I highly suggest you do. If you have a friend who's got it, or preferably download it and pay for it. The guy that spent the time developing it, Archer's Advantage software program, you can download it straight to your computer. It's $39, and it will help you build out your perfect arrow shaft before you ever place your order. And so with me, I like shooting 125 grain arrows, or 125 grain broadheads rather. I like shooting nocturnals, which is 25 grains on the back. I shoot feathers. I enter all that into the program, and it tells me exactly. It spits out, what arrow length, what bow, a hard cam, a compound, the poundage, the draw length. All that factors into what spine you need to order, because a lot of people don't know that, and that program will tell you to do that. So with me shooting a 67-pound bow, that's just what I'm very, very, very comfortable with. I can hunt in January in the teens, probably the negative teens, and have no problem drawing a 67-pound bow, which is what I've settled on. 67-pound bow, 29-inch draw length. With all the specs that I just mentioned, I need a 300 spine arrow. So I'm going to take this arrow, and then a lot of people cut it down to 29 inches. They'll just stick it in the arrow saw and cut off, just whack off the end of it right here. Well, here's a little tip that not a lot of people are aware of. If there is going to be any run out on this shaft, meaning if there's any wobble whatsoever in the .001 straightness, it's going to occur at the ends. That's just how it's made in the manufacturing process. So if it's going to be on both ends, what I like to do is cut from both ends to eliminate or reduce as much of that wobble as I possibly can. So what we're going to do is I've set up my arrow saw right here for a 29-inch cut. So I can see right here, if I put my finger here, that's how much excess raw shaft is going to be cut off. I'm going to measure that, break that. That's probably about 3 or 4 inches. I'm going to measure it here in a second and determine how much extra I can cut off both ends, and that's what we'll do to get our 29-inch shaft. Okay, and that eliminates and cuts off from both ends, not just whacking it off on one. Is it necessary? Probably not at all. Again, I'm stacking the odds in my favor. Okay guys, what we did here is we just went ahead and made a cut off. We cut about 1.5 inches off this side right here, and I'm going to go ahead and cut 1.5 inches off this side, and we'll make sure it's at exactly 29 inches. It's going to be somewhere around that area. But before we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to remove all these factory nocks, and we're going to replace and put on this end, because again, we want to cut from two ends. If I replace these nocks and cut right back here, I'd be cutting from the same exact end. So I'm going to replace these. I'm going to remove these factory nocks and put my brand of nock that I'm personally shooting on that end. And here's why we want to do that, guys. Let me show you. I'm going to show you how to remove a factory nock. Just grab it with a pair of pliers, clamp down, twist and pull, and there you have your factory knocked out. And I shoot nocturnals personally, and if you notice, so you measure, this one's kind of bloody, it's been through a deer or two probably, but you'll see that there's a groove down there and there's a groove here. A shaft length is measured from the throat of the groove, the bottom of the groove, to the insert. And if you'll notice, these ears, the two pieces that clip around the clamp around the string, your bowstring, when you snap it on and load an arrow, the ears on this shaft here, my nocturnal, are longer than the one on the factory one. And so if I cut some of the arrows with this nock inserted, some of the ones with this nock, it's going to change the length of the shaft, a 1/16 of an inch, a 32nd, an 1/8 of an inch, shorter or longer. There's going to be different sizes. Again, I mentioned right up front, I'm not a world-class archer. I'm very adequate in shooting deer, and I love to think that I'm pretty proficient at that. I am not going to challenge Levi Morgan for the next world title. But, again, we're going to stack every single odd that we can in our favor. So I'm going to go ahead and put every nocturnal in these shafts and remove these from this end, and then I'll show you how to make that roll cut that I think I mentioned that earlier. It's a specific type of cut you make on the arrow saw. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's a roll cut. You roll the shaft into the saw blade, but I'm going to show you, because again, this video is about showing you how to take you from ground zero to you have your own arrows that you've made. Okay, so let's get to it. Okay guys, so what we've done here is we've put all our nocturnals in the opposite end that we made our cut from, or actually the same end we made our cut in, which lets us now take more excess off the opposite end that we have not cut yet. So that way we'll have cut from both sides. Well, before I do that, I'm going to grab a pack of nocturnals here and show you. There's a lot of different ones on there. I actually ran a poll on Saddle Up, our Facebook group that deals specifically with saddle hunting, and asked people what their favorite lighted nocks were. A lot of people said nocturnals. There were fire nocks. Glory seemed to be an up-and-comer one. I personally have used nocturnals for a long time. Obviously, if you guys can't tell, I have been affiliated with Faradyne and is the parent company, but I've been on Muzzy's pro staff for, I don't know, over a decade. So I have access to nocturnals. And the nice thing about them is the new strobing ones have a universal fit design, meaning that they come with 3 different inserts. So, you know, in the past, I had to figure out, I had to look at an arrow chart, shaft diameter, inside diameter, and figure out which nocturnals I needed to order for which shaft. This made it obviously a lot easier for the end user, people like me and you. It also makes it easier on the manufacturing process. They manufacture 1 nock and 3 different inserts that will customize it to the fit of each shaft. I've already looked at Nocturnal's chart and figured out that I need the S insert, the S bushing, if you will. And so what you can do is just open it up here, and to me I found this is the absolute easiest way. Just go ahead and cut all 4 sides, hold it in place, and then you can just lift off what you cut off. The S bushing is the one on the inside. Again, we're going to cut it. We're going to push this into the side that we've already cut, and all you're going to do is snap this in. It's a really snug fit, and that lets you know you have the right bushing. And we'll put all these in. The rest of those bushings can be thrown away unless you have a friend who's going to use them. And then just snap in your nocks after you insert your bushings. And now you'll see we have all our shafts, have our nocturnals in, and now we can go ahead and proceed with the cutting of the opposite end that we have not touched yet. Guys, this is going to be a little noisy, but I'm going to show you how to do a roll cut, and then we'll pick back up from there. So let me turn the saw on. What I'm doing is I'm going to roll it in. And we'll go ahead and make the rest of those cuts off camera. Guys, you don't need to sit here and watch me cut a dozen shafts, but you take it and you roll it into that saw, and that's just the preferred way to do it, okay? So, can you do it some other way? It might leave a little bit of a jagged edge, I'm not sure, but you go ahead and cut that in. And then if you've got one, kind of a burr remover, you can take this on this end right here, run it around, make sure there's no burrs. But to tell you the truth, this thing cuts at like 4,000 RPM. I've never seen a burr left after making that cut. So anyway, let's go ahead and do the rest of these, and we'll come back here in a second. Okay guys, we have finished. We've cut from both ends now. We have exactly a 29-inch shaft from the throat of the nock to the end of where the insert is going to fit in. Speaking of where the insert is going to fit in, I've purposely not cleaned up this mess right here. You can see how much carbon dust has been generated from that really high RPM wheel. So what we're going to do is show you how to take care of that. So I can actually, nothing's coming off out yet, but here's what I like to do, guys. Take a little bit of acetone or paint thinner. I have a cup, probably looks like it's an old tuna fish can or something like that, that I keep down on the second shelf. And I use it just to put a little bit of paint thinner in there, and then I dip a Q-tip in, and I run it in. This is a perfectly brand new, literally just got it out of the package. And if I put some paint thinner on it and run it and swab it up in there, look how black that is. So if you can see that, that is super, super black. It will literally take 3 or 4 times. I can go to the other end, swab it in the paint thinner, and run it up in there, and just keep rotating it around and running it in there. And it's coming out a little bit better. It's actually got less than I was thinking. Maybe it's because I banged it on the counter a few times. But you'll need to do that with every single one of your shafts. And then another thing you can do, guys, again, some people really think this is completely unnecessary. So if you've got a long enough insert, like these factory inserts, see they're 1.5 inches long. Really, if you've got your cut wasn't perfectly square, you know, if your insert's long enough, it really won't matter if your cut's square enough, because the remaining insert going back into the shaft is going to square up with the perpendicular lines of the shaft and keep the front of it, or the face of it, square. But if you just want to put every odd in your favor, this is a G5 arrow squaring device, ASD. And what it does is you can flip one side for carbon arrows, the other side for aluminum arrows. I have it set for carbon on this side, and literally you just place it on a flat surface and just roll it in like that. And what that does is that makes sure that that end is absolutely square with your shaft. Okay. Have I found it to be really necessary? No, I have not. If you don't already have this, I don't know if it's really necessary and worth buying. But I will probably run through and just touch up every single cut just to make sure I already have the device. Again, we're making sure everything is in our favor. So I'm going to go through here and run Q-tips through every end of the shaft, get all the dust out. And that's so that we have good adherence or glue adhesion from our inserts. And I'm going to make sure they're absolutely squared up. So we'll do that right now and come back and show you how to put inserts in. Okay guys, we've got all the shafts cut down. We've got them cleaned out with alcohol. All the dust is out of them. They've dried. It's actually been a little bit. So there's no residual effects of the acetone or paint thinner or anything on there. So let's go ahead now and put the inserts in. And what I do is I take a Q-tip and I just cut off one of the ends. And now I've got a little stir stick. That's my stir stick. Now, some epoxy comes with it. What I found is most don't. And what you're looking for when you buy epoxy is, I used to buy it from Ace Hardware all the time. Now I found out that Ace Hardware only carries Gorilla Glue, at least my local Ace Hardware does, only carries Gorilla Glue, and it's the real quick setting, 30-second, 2-minute, I mean nothing was over 5 minutes. What you're looking for is, if you can find it, 24-hour cure epoxy. You want the longest duration, longest time-lapse cure you can get. And the reason why behind that is you're gluing in and epoxying in these inserts that take a lot of vibration, a lot of impact, and that quick drying epoxy is more prone to shattering, it's more prone to being brittle. So you want the longest epoxy, longest drying time epoxy you can get. This was 2 ton, and it is not 5-minute epoxy. So what you want to do is snap the cover off. I've already used this before in the past. Actually, I built some arrows last week or so, and squirt a few out, squirt a good gob out, if you will. That's probably way too much, to be honest with you, because you're going to see it doesn't take a whole lot. Then I'm going to take my little new stir stick, my Q-tip that I cut the end off, mix it all together really, really, really super well. Okay. Once you've got it mixed really well, we're going to get into the package of inserts that they sent with the arrow shafts. I'm going to try not to rip that bag, because as you can see, I love keeping these bags to hang things on and put other little knickknacks and things up. Okay, so here's our long insert. Now you'll see why, you know, the theory is that if you're not perfectly square on the end, it really doesn't matter. There's so much of this sticking in the shaft. As long as this is square, you know, if you cut off at a really small angle, it's still going to be square. But again, I want to put all the odds in my favor when it talks about squaring and making your arrow fly true. So what I'm going to do now, guys, is dip into this epoxy some, and I'm going to smear it on one side. I'm going to coat it pretty good all up and down from the end of the insert all the way to the bottom of it. Okay, and you'll notice I'm not going all the way around, and there's a reason why. I'm going to grab an arrow shaft here and stick it in. As I'm sticking it in, I'm going to, remember that roll cut? I'm going to start rolling it and putting it around. Now that is coating that whole entire arrow shaft is coated now, even though I only put epoxy on one side of the insert. And I'm just going to go ahead and put it all the way down, make sure it's seated firm. And what I like to do, guys, I keep a little roll of paper towels here. I like to go ahead and just wipe any excess that's squeezed out during that process. And I'll go ahead and make sure it's coated really good again, or pushed in and seated firmly good, and then just set it off here to the side. Now I've got a really nice arrow rack off camera back there. It's got holes up and down below it. You can stick it in it. I actually bought it from an archery shop that was going out of business several years ago. But for now, just for as I'm building these, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and build a dozen of them, and then when I'm done, I'll move them over to that drying rack or that arrow rack. It's not really a drying rack as much as it is, I don't know what I do with my paper towel now, but so much as a drying rack as it is a storage rack. But again, I'm wiping the excess off, and I'm just going to let it sit here and dry for now. And guys, that's kind of the thing that this is an easy part of it. The thing to do, the thing to remember, is the tip about don't buy quick drying epoxy. Find the longest curing epoxy that you can find, because these are going to take repeated abuse. And when you're shooting 300 feet per second into a target and pounding that bag over and over and over, that's a pretty big beating on those inserts, guys. So I'm going to finish those up. We'll come back and show you the next step from here. Well, hey guys, we've got all the labels stripped off. It's been a little bit now. We've let the shafts dry. There's no residual effects of any of the goof off or acetone or anything that we've applied or put on this shaft. Really super smooth, and again, no anything as far as a chemical on that shaft that's going to keep this arrow wrap from drying. I want to go ahead and wipe it off one last time. And then what we're going to do, guys, is I'll show you how to properly apply arrow wrap. These Wild Edge arrow wraps here has our big logo in front, and then the small skull, the Wild Edge skull's in the back. That one's, you need that toward the knock if you're going to apply a Wild Edge arrow wrap. You look at whatever wrap that you're applying and figure out how it best needs to go based on the layout of the wrap. But I want to peel it off. Make sure, again, the big Wild Edge logo is toward the insert, not the knock. And the reason why is once we put our feathers or vanes on, we need to make sure that that would cover that logo up. The skull is designed, I actually sat down with the lady at One Stringer who works for them and helped design this personally, and we laid it all out. And we put the skull logo so that the veins or the fletching would be in front of that. So that's why it's actually particular on which way it goes on our wrap. Now, what I'm going to do, guys, is I've laid this out, and it helps to have really good light. Actually, my light could be better here, but what you want to do is get your shaft where it's absolutely perpendicular to the arrow wrap. And I am lining up the very, very back of the shaft. Actually, there's that little small bushing that's in there. I'm actually going to stop the arrow wrap just at that bushing. So I'm looking at that. And then I want to make sure that that shaft is parallel with the wrap before I lay it down on the table. Then I'm going to take it and press it a little bit, roll it slightly back and forth, and then just roll it toward the open adhesive. And what I'm doing is I'm pushing on it and pressing and making sure that there's no bubbles anywhere in this, and then just roll it forward. and then I'm going to run my hands over it just to make sure that it adhered absolutely correct. And this is what you've got here. You've got absolutely a perfect arrow wrap. Logos in front, the skulls in the back. We'll have room to put our fletching here. And what this does, guys, is obviously, like we talked about, it makes your arrow, it gives you a chance to personalize it. You can jazz it up, whatever you want. I like a lot of white in my arrow wrap. Not, excuse me, not only does the lighted knock help track arrow flight, the brighter it is. A lot of people will shoot hot pink wraps with hot pink fletching. It just really helps you pick that arrow up in flight. Obviously, everyone who's been around me or followed me at any length of time knows that I'm a huge Predator Fall Gray fan. So we integrated Predator Fall Gray into our wrap, but I wanted it to fade into white and get as much white as I could so that it helps me track that arrow flight in on its way to the animal. So that's how you apply a wrap, and then the next step is we're going to actually adhere the fletching, and we'll show you how that goes here in a second. Okay guys, this is the part where actually it kind of all starts coming together. This is the fun part to me. I actually love fletching more than any part of this process. This is where the rubber meets the road, and this is the kind of where you get to see the you know, it's like if you're baking a cake and you start looking at it and it's rising and you see the end results turning golden brown. It's getting, you know, the smells wafting through the oven, and you're just anticipating it. This is the same spot we're at with fletching. I personally love to fletch with feathers. There's a lot of reasons, you know. Obviously, the number one reason is they just look cool. I love the way feathers look. You know, they're also way more forgiving of incidental contact. They launch just slightly quicker. That's according to an independent study by Norm Mulaney, who's a noted bow expert. He used to test and do a lot of writing for Bowhunting World and some of those things like that. They stay a little quicker than a normal vane, all the way up until about 50 yards or so, where the drag will, you know, start slowing them down and impeding their flight a little bit more. There's just a lot of things that are good about feathers. You can rip a feather almost in half. Heck, you can rip it 2/3 of the way, and it will still fly almost as well as it did before it was ever touched. I've done that several times. I've shot the same feathers through deer. Last year I shot one arrow fletched with 3 feathers, shot it through 6 deer in a row. And it could have been through deer the previous year. I'm not sure. I would just wash it off as soon as I got home and put it back in my quiver. So anyway, guys, that's enough about feathers. Let's talk about fletching jigs a little bit. There are a lot of different fletching jigs out there. I have no affiliation with any of them, but I will tell you that I've tried a bunch of them over the years, and the Bitzenberger is by far the Cadillac of fletching jigs. I started off with some other ones, some plastic ones that look sort of like this, kind of a knockoff, and man, I'm telling you, there was a lot of slop in them. This thing is built like a tank. I firmly anticipate passing this to my kids, and if they so choose, they can pass it to their kids. I mean, this thing will last generations. You can buy a straight fletching jig with it, or you can also, you can also buy a helical fletching jig. Okay, back in the day when, and it's been a long time since I shot vanes, but a lot of times I would put vanes on with a straight, and I would put them on with an offset, meaning that if this is straight up and down, you can offset a little to the left or a little to the right, and that means you're running your fletch or your vane at a diagonal. When your shaft is going straight up and down, you're putting it on it at a diagonal. That's an offset. The Bitzenberger actually allows you to change your offset here and here, so you can center your offset on the shaft. And if you want to get really skilled at it, really kind of take advantage of the features that the Bitz offers, is the best way to say it, you can put an offset and fletch with a helical, which is what I personally do. That way I'm running the hardest fletch helical that I can, and I do that to create the most spin I can as soon as possible. As soon as my arrow launches and leaves the sight window, it's already starting to spin. And I do that because it's going to gain better stability, it's going to stabilize quicker, it's going to, you know, even out faster. And the reason why is because my average shot, I'm a Midwest, sort of the middle of the United States, whitetail hunter primarily. Yes, I'm about to leave in a day after tomorrow to go elk hunting in Colorado. I still don't expect most of my shots to be over, you know, if I shoot past 60 yards, they'll be extremely surprising. I will probably limit myself to that. But 99% of my shots are 18 yards on average. Every once in a while I'll set a field edge or you know, something like that, and I might stretch it on out to 30 or 40, but that's pretty much the extreme. Most of my shots are closer to bedding areas, on trails, in woods, in thickets, and literally a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 yard shot is probably really the average, the norm for me. So I don't have to worry about a hard helical slowing my arrow down at 60 or 70 yards. If I lived out west and I was shooting, you know, pronghorns, and I was hunting, you know, in Alaska, and I was shooting across big gorges at mountain goats and stuff, I would not fletch with as hard a helical, I'll just tell you. But let's get into it and show you how this works. This Bitzenberger actually recommends that you keep this little keeper. It's a magnet. This is a very strong magnet right there, and I've kept that keeper on there for 20 years, and that magnet has not lost any strength. So I'll set that aside. What we want to do is we're going to grab a shaft here, guys, and the nock. There's a little receiver inside there. I'm sure the video will not be able to pick it up, but there's a little notch that nock will fit into. So you want to make sure it seats in there properly. And what I do, guys, is I go ahead and rotate this just a little bit, and it will fall into a groove. Okay, and you can set it up to fletch 3 or 4 fletches on an arrow. I have mine set up so it's gonna click 3 times in that 360-degree circle around. So every third of the way around, it falls into that groove and clicks. And you want to make sure that you start off in one of those clicks. I've messed up sometimes and not started off in one of those, and then all of a sudden you barely turn it, it falls into a click. Now all of a sudden you're going to be guessing all the way around the arrow. Take advantage and use those 3 clicks, those 3 stops, to make sure that your 3 fletches are absolutely perfectly centered apart. So guys, what I'm going to do is I usually start off with a red feather. That's my cock feather, the one that differentiates and lets me know which orientation my arrow is sitting on my bow. And I just go ahead and you put it in here. That's my straight jig. I just use that to show you the difference. So we're going to lay that off to the side. So what I'm doing, guys, is I'm this base, and I use True Flight feathers right now because they have the most consistent bases in the feather world. I've tried them all. You can see I've got a bag that actually, these are wild turkey feathers that I've taken or harvested. It's about the only time you'll hear me use the harvest word in the hunting world. I've harvested those feathers from turkeys I killed, and I'm planning on buying a chopper or a burner next year, and I'm going to try to make my own. I think that's going to be a really cool project, to make my own fletching out of feathers, out of turkeys that I've killed with my bow. So it all kind of comes full circle. But you'll see there's a notch right here. I line up the base of that feather with that notch. That gives me a consistent placement every single time my vanes or feathers or fletching isn't up and down the shaft. It's all perfectly perpendicular to the nock. And as far as what do I use as far as fletching glue or anything like that, guys, here it is. Here's the big secret. Walmart super glue. I've used it for 20 plus years fletching feathers. You can't beat it. So I kind of bumped that as I was talking. So let me make sure that's exactly where I want it. Okay. So all I'm going to do is lay down a bead of super glue here. And then what I'm going to do is the base of this, let me turn it so it's faced this way. So the base, the bottom of that is what I'm going to set this against that and rock it into the shaft. So I'm going to set it here and let that magnet catch, and then I'm going to rock it into the shaft and then push. I'm pushing into the shaft and pulling down so that I make sure that it's firmly seated against this base, and then it's in there all the way. So here's what it looks like right now. It's all the way down against the bottom of this right here of the base, and then it's pushed completely down against the shaft. And you'll see I've got it set up. Now, the first time you set up your Bitzenberger, you'll have to figure out how much offset and how much helical you can get so that the base will stay on the shaft. And this helical jig kind of wraps around the shaft, imparting that helical, okay? And I use right wing feathers with a right wing fletch and a right wing twist, okay? The reason I do that, there's 2 or 3 reasons. One is right wing feathers are easier to come by. More stores carry right wing fletch feathers than not. Mainly though, I use right wing feathers because it imparts a twist into it's a certain way. It spins your arrows a certain way. That right wing will twist your arrows so that when your field points hit the bag, it tightens them. Now there's things you can do. You can put bowstring wax on your field point threads and it'll keep them tight. Again, we're talking about every little thing helping, right? So when you're shooting hundreds of shots in a day or a week's time, and every shot, if it's a left wing, every shot is untwisting or screwing open that field point, that would be bothersome to me. So I just put the odds in my favor that it's going to screw and tighten that field point every time. That's the biggest reason I use right wing feathers right there if you want to know, okay? So again, with this, all you got to do is squeeze it open, pull it off. It's already on. That's one thing I love about super glue. It goes really fast. You can fletch a lot of feathers really fast with super glue. Now you take this dial at the bottom, and I'm just going to turn it, and I'm going to turn it until it falls into the next notch. Right there. And you can just tell it falls into the notch. Now I'm going to grab a natural, and we're going to repeat the process, guys. And I'm not going to belabor the point here. We've already done that enough. But you just repeat this 2 more times on this shaft, and then do the same thing over and over with all your arrows. Lay a bead of glue on this base. I'm going to turn it so that I've got better access to it. Again, I'm going to start by putting it on the base and pivot it so the magnets catch it. They just caught it. And now I'm going to push and pull. I'm pulling down and pushing onto the shaft. Okay guys, we're wrapping up. We're pretty much finished. Let me show you what the finished product looks like here. Here we go. So we've got the wild edge wrap. We're got some really cool barb feathers, nocturnal. We've got it cut down to length. We've removed the ugly gaudy label that came on it. We have a finished arrow that's ready to take hunting. Why do I do this, guys? Couple different reasons. One, it's a lot cheaper to buy raw shafts. I get a lot of pleasure in working them down and doing it myself. I turn out a finished product exactly the way I want it. I'm not relying on other people to build arrows for me. There's a lot of pleasure in that. You know, there's different things you can do with it. Obviously, there's a ton of different designs you can do with arrow wraps. There's a literally endless array of vane and fletching options. You can do different inserts. This was the factory insert you saw me use that came with the box. It's a 22 grain insert that Victory supplies with this shaft. Muzzy makes a 50 grain brass insert that would up this. Right now, this came out to be a 29-inch shaft. It's 458 grains is what this weighs. It has an 8.9% FOC, and kinetic energy is going to be, let me look at my notes here. Because I ran the numbers just a second ago. I'm going to have 147 grains up front. 147 grains up front. It'll be flying at 285 feet per second out of my 67-pound bow, and that's going to give it's got to finish out with an FOC of 10.9%. 10.9% FOC. That's going to yield a kinetic energy foot-pounds of 86.49. If I went with the brass, the 50 grain brass, that would up the front to 175 grains. I would be at 13% FOC, but I would drop my feet per second down to 278 a little bit. So I would drop from 285 to 278, but I would pick up almost half a pound of kinetic energy. I'd go from 86.49 to 87.09, so about half a pound. So you can see I'm kind of at the point of diminishing returns there, and so I chose to use the factory inserts. So, but that gives you options. You can play and build different arrow shafts and find out what you like. Build some for whitetails, build some for pronghorns, build some for elk. This is just a good all-around arrow. I will actually use this for elk and deer this year out of my bow. So anyway, hopefully that helped you guys. If you have any questions, let me know. But I think we've covered about everything. I know this video turned out to be a long one, but you can go back through it, fast forward, and rewind, and find the part that you need help on or you had questions about, and hopefully this will really help you out. Okay? Thanks, guys.